A palpable sense of crisis has gripped the international community following a series of remarks by President Donald Trump that are being widely interpreted as a direct threat of a second major military strike against Iran. This dramatic escalation in rhetoric, delivered with the president's signature blend of calculated ambiguity and blunt force, comes as a direct response to the deepening military alliance between Tehran and Moscow. The recent summit between Russian and Iranian leaders, which solidified plans for Iran to supply Russia with advanced ballistic missiles for use in the Ukraine war, has apparently crossed a critical red line for the Trump administration. The president's comments have transformed the simmering tensions in the Middle East into a potential flashpoint, suggesting that Washington is prepared to use military force not only to deter Iran in its own region, but also to decisively impact the course of the war in Europe. The president's hint of military action was delivered during an impromptu press conference on the South Lawn of the White House. When asked by a reporter about the confirmed reports of an impending Iranian missile transfer to Russia, President Trump paused before responding. He stated that the United States was watching the situation very, very closely, and that his administration would not stand by and allow a terrorist regime to fuel a war of aggression with weapons that will kill countless innocent people. He then added a more pointed and historically resonant comment, reminding the assembled press that his administration had previously taken decisive actions against Iranian threats in the region. He remarks that Iran's leaders should remember what happened to those who plotted against America and its interests, a clear and unmistakable reference to the 2020 drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, the powerful commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force. President Trump concluded by saying, "We have a button, they have a button, but our button is bigger, and it works. You should think about that. We want peace, but we will secure peace through strength." This carefully worded threat, stopping just short of an explicit declaration, has set off a frantic chain of events within his administration and around the world. The language was deliberately designed to create strategic uncertainty, forcing Iran and its allies to guess at Washington's precise intention while leaving no doubt as to the severity of the potential consequences. It is a classic application of President Trump's madman theory of foreign policy, intended to make adversary believe he is capable of taking actions that others might deem irrational, thereby compelling them to back down. The immediate objective is clear: to pressure Iran to halt the transfer of ballistic missiles to Russia. The broader strategic goal is to shatter the burgeoning Russia-Iran alliance, which the White House views as a primary threat to American interests. The State Department, under the leadership of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, quickly moved to translate the president's threat into a more formal diplomatic posture. Secretary Rubio, a longtime and vocal critic of the Iranian regime, embarked on a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. He held urgent phone calls with the foreign ministers of the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, urging them to issue a unified condemnation of Iran's action and to warn Tehran of the grave consequences of proceeding with the missile transfer. In these calls, Secretary Rubio reportedly stressed that this was not just about Ukraine, but about the global non-proliferation regime, allowing a state sponsor of terrorism to become a major supplier of ballistic missiles in an international conflict, he argued, would set a catastrophic precedent. Simultaneously, Secretary Rubio reached out to America's key partners in the Middle East, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The message to these allies was one of the reassurance and coordinations. He affirmed the United States' ironclad commitment to their security and informed them that Washington would not permit Iran to further destabilize the region or to acquire the advanced Russian military technology, such as the Su-35 fighter jets, promised in its deal with Moscow. To these nations, the American threat was not just about missiles going to Russia. It was about preventing the reward Iran would receive in return, which would directly threaten them. Secretary Rubio's diplomacy is aimed at building a broad international coalition to diplomatically isolate Iran, providing a justification for any potential military action by framing it as a last resort in the face of a collective threat. His public statements have been stern, repeatedly stating that while the United States prefers a diplomatic solution, all options remain on the table to prevent Iran from becoming an arsenal for aggressors. The Pentagon has made sure that the president's words are backed by credible military force. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth authorized a series of highly visible deployments designed to send an unmistakable signal to Tehran. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which had been operating in the Mediterranean, was ordered to transit through the Suez Canal and take up a position in the Arabian Sea. Just outside the Persian Gulf, this places a formidable concentration of American air power within easy striking distance of Iran. In addition, the Air Force announced the deployment of a squadron of B-2 Spirit stealth bomber to a forward operating base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. These long-range bombers are specifically designed to penetrate the most sophisticated air defenses, making them the ideal platform for striking high-value, heavily fortified targets inside Iran. Furthermore, Secretary Hegseth placed all United States forces under a central command, which oversees operations in the Middle East, on a heightened state of alert. He has been in constant communication with his Israeli and Gulf state counterparts, coordinating air defense posture and sharing intelligence. In a press briefing at the Pentagon, Secretary Hegseth stated that these deployments were prudent defensive measures intended to deter Iranian aggression and protect American assets and personnel in the region. He refused to be drawn into speculation about specific targets, but emphasized that the United States military has the capability and the readiness to execute any options the president may choose to defend our national interests. This combination of naval and air power deployment is a classic show of force, making the threat of a strike tangible and immediate. The threat has also reverberated within the United States. The Department of Homeland Security, led by Secretary Kristi Noem, issued a public bulletin warning of the potential for retaliatory actions by Iran or its proxies. The bulletin advised federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies to increase their vigilance for threats against critical infrastructure, such as power grids and financial networks, as well as potential plots against government officials or Jewish and Israeli cultural centers. Secretary Noem stated that while there was no specific credible threat, Iran has a long history of using its intelligence services and proxies like Hezbollah to conduct attacks abroad, and the nation must be prepared. This has created a heightened sense of alert domestically, bringing the international crisis into the daily lives of Americans and building a political case for preemptive action to neutralize a foreign threat. The Department of Justice under Attorney General Pam Bondi has complemented these efforts by announcing a new initiative to disrupt and prosecute Iranian intelligence network operating within the United States. Attorney General Bondi stated that the FBI and other law enforcement agencies were intensifying their surveillance of individuals suspected of acting as unregistered agents of the Iranian government. This legal and law enforcement pressure is designed to disrupt Iran's ability to retaliate on American soil, further boxing in the regime. The intelligence community is operating at a high tempo to provide the president with a clear picture of the situation. CIA Director John Ratcliffe has agencies focused on tracking the specific locations of the ballistic missile within Iran, the readiness of Iran's air defense system, and the movement of senior IRGC commanders. This operational intelligence would be critical for planning and executing a successful strike with minimal risk to American force. Meanwhile, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is responsible for synthesizing all available intelligence to provide the president with a strategic overview. While her office has confirmed the intelligence regarding the missile deal, sources suggest that in private briefing, Director Gabbard has also emphasized the significant risk of a strike. Her assessment reportedly warned that an attack on Iran could easily spiral into a full-scale regional war, throwing proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon, disrupt global oil supplies through the Strait of Hormuz, and potentially force Russia and China to increase their support for Tehran, leading to a much wider confrontation. This creates a classic tension within the administration between the hawkish desire for decisive action and the cautious assessment of its potential catastrophic consequences. The international reaction has been swift and divided. Iran has responded with loud defiance, The commander of the IRGC Aerospace Force declared that Iran's sacred defense is not subjected to negotiation and that any American aggression would be met with a crushing and regrettable response. Iranian state media has broadcast image of missile tests and naval drills in the Persian Gulf, attempting to project an image of strength and readiness. Russia has vehemently condemned the American threats, with the foreign ministry in Moscow accusing the United States of nuclear blackmail and reckless warmongering. A Kremlin spokesperson reaffirmed Russia's strategic partnership with Iran and warned that an attack on its ally would have unpredictable and dangerous consequences for global stability. China, already facing a stark ultimatum from Washington over its support for Russia, is in an extremely precarious position. Beijing has publicly called for calm and restraint from all parties, urging a diplomatic solution. Privately, Chinese leaders are deeply alarmed. A U.S. strike on Iran would create chaos in a region from which China supports a vast amount of its energy. It would also dramatically escalate the confrontation with the United States, making it harder for Beijing to find an off-ramp. America's allies are also split. Israel's government has been conspicuously quiet, sign of tacit approval and close coordination with Washington. For Israel, a U.S. strike that degrades Iran's missile capabilities and disrupts its nuclear program would be the fulfillment of a long-held strategic objective. The Gulf Arab states, while officially calling for de-escalation, are privately supportive of the American pressure. In Europe, however, there is widespread panic. Leaders in Paris and Berlin have expressed deep alarm, fearing that the Trump administration is about to ignite a new war in the Middle East while the old one in Ukraine still rages. They are desperately calling for diplomacy, creating another major transatlantic rift. President Trump's hint of a second strike has placed the world on a knife edge. It is a high-risk, high-reward gamble. If Iran backs down and cancels the missile transfer, he will have won a major victory, fracturing the Russia-Iran axis and asserting American dominance without firing a shot. But if Iran calls its bluff, or if a miscalculation by either side leads to an unattended clash, the world could be plunged into a new and devastating conflict with consequences that would dwarf the current war in Ukraine. The fate of the region and perhaps the world now hangs on the response from Tehran. Many of my listeners, like 70%, have not subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. That is actually what makes the show go on. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to Soak Him Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first one's on me. But if you have watched the show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen the show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.